Minister, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. So we've heard from the ministers yesterday about the risk-adjusted strategy to reopening the economy, with the ministers explaining which sectors of the economy can resume operations as of Friday next week. Speak to us about what the next step now entails, which I imagine involves the feedback you'll be getting from the public.
Definitely, Clement, you are correct. That's why yesterday we released the risk-adjusted strategy document for South Africans to make their comments, particularly on level 4. Yes, we can make comments as South Africans, as the public, on the other levels, level 3, level 2, level 1. But what we are mostly preferring is if South Africans can focus on the level that we're going to on Friday next week, which is level 4. What is their take of the propositions that we are making as government? The easing of the lockdown from level 5 to level 4 and allowing limited or certain business activities to continue in our country, allowing certain workers to return back to work. As my colleague said yesterday, it will be about 1.5 million workers who will resume work on the 1st of May. So we are saying to South Africans, by Monday, 12 o'clock, we will appreciate if they can then comment on that document, but using the guidelines that we have given. There are guidelines on commenting, as you will know, Clement, so that we are not all over the place. We say on this section, on this paragraph, on this sentence, here is my comment, so that we can move swiftly to the regulations that we should also put before the nation on where are we going with level 4.
So is this, Minister, also an opportunity for members of the public to comment about things like the lifting of the ban on the sale of cigarettes? You received a lot of questions and concerns about that yesterday. Some have argued that decision was irrational, given that when the sale was banned initially, government said it was due to smokers' increased risk to COVID-19 as the virus affects the respiratory system. So that hasn't changed. Can people also comment about that specifically?
Definitely. But by the way, even comments that we received yesterday are part of the public participation that we are dealing with. So we take all these comments to the Coronavirus National Command Council that will be sitting on Wednesday to look at all these comments, including comments on tobacco and any other related matter. By the way, tobacco forms part of these items that were barred on the 5th level of lockdown, as you would know. Now, if it is to open on the 4th level, South Africans have every right to comment on it, and as government, and particularly the National Coronavirus Council, led by the President, will also consider those comments around tobacco.
All right, so it's correct to say that the lifting of the ban on cigarettes and other decisions may be reconsidered after government has considered all the inputs from the various stakeholders?
We are a government that respects the views of 61 million South Africans. We will not have put this risk-adjusted approach for comments if we did not have in our heart the capability to take into account what our people are saying. Yes, we will take into account, but of course take all other factors into consideration.
I want us to talk now, Minister, about the 5 levels of restrictions. The Minister of Local Government explained that if we see the levels of transmission increasing, we may go back to level 5 or level 4 if the transmissions are lowered. What's going to guide that process? In other words, what formula are you going to use?
Let's just say for now, we know that for now, let me take one province in the Western Cape, we are standing as of yesterday at 1,514 infections, and we're standing at 32 deaths. Let's say there was to be an increase of 15% on this number. Definitely, we will then have to think very hard, and that's what the Minister of Health, by the way, in terms of the law, can declare an area an emergency area on health grounds. So if you have got more people, over 15% of people in that part of the country or in that district having contracted the disease and testing positive, 15% of what was existing before on the rate of infections, that might make us to reconsider whether this area should remain at level 4 or using the authority that the Minister of Health has already in terms of the law, let that area be classified as level 5.
Other people may argue, Minister, that cases have been increasing exponentially recently. So what justified then the move from level 5 to level 4 when we've seen so many cases increasing in many parts of the country?
You'll know, as I do, that the increases were also linked to the increase in the number of testing. So we have had quite a number of tests that have been conducted. As we speak now, we are one of those countries who are standing as of yesterday at 161,004 tests that were conducted. So you have an increase, but also linked to that percentage of increase is linked to the percentage of the numbers of tests that were conducted. So in overall, we are still seeing the flattening of the curve, notwithstanding the increases in the numbers of people who are testing positive, because that number is drawn from a bigger sample of tests that have been conducted. And you'll also know that we are one of those few countries that have also gone out there to screen people. We have gotten into the homes of people to even find out whether they have the symptoms, whether they are having any symptoms, whether they are coughing or they are sneezing. So we have taken even the latitude, the action of going out there ourselves as government. We have an army that is screening people. But even as we opened, by the way, on the 1st, the responsibility to screen people and to see whether they don't have symptoms or whether they don't have the virus will also rest with the companies. These are some of the obligations that companies that will be open on the 1st will also sit with.
Minister, I want to now talk about something different. I understand that as government you have picked up some confusion around the restrictions at level 4. What are those, and what do people need to understand about the stage that we're going into on Friday?
Well, first of all, as people, all of us, there is this restriction on the movement of people that remains, including the question of physical distancing or social distancing. That remains even in companies that will open, even in the various sectors of companies that will open. They will still need to practice the principle and guidelines that have been provided by the Department of Health on physical distancing, on ensuring that, again, we don't have people touching one another. All those principles remain, and movement of people in the country, by the way, across provinces, that remains in force unless you have a permit from a magistrate or the police station. So our movements are still limited as informed by all those guidelines and health guidelines that we spoke about under level 5. Even a curfew between 8 and 5 in the morning is there now. Those who will be going to work, the only difference now is that there will be a category of people who will go to work who are essentially not essential workers. Okay. That's the difference. Yeah. But a few of them, those of us who are not going to work, those of us who can work from home are advised, particularly those of us who are 60 years and above. We are still requesting all employers to ensure that if in their workforce they have people who are 60 and above, let them allow those to work from home because, as we all know, many of those that have died from this virus are people who are older.
Minister, one of the concerns out there is the messaging from government. There are people who feel sometimes the ministers are not properly prepared or have enough information when explaining the regulations. There's been flip-flops on regulations. Some ministers have said things that are not in the regulations, and what that does is create further confusion. How are you dealing with that, the strengthening of your messaging?
That's why when we get the public comments on Monday, we will indeed then strengthen, because you will need regulations to allow all those economic activities to take place from the 1st of May, this Workers' Day on Friday. So indeed we have a team that is working on the regulations as we speak now, so that we don't do them in a rush. So we have a team that is working on them, but they will also take into account what our people are saying, because we will receive those comments by South Africans tomorrow, 12 noon. So those regulations, whatever regulations that will have been crafted, will then have to also be in line with the views of the majority of South Africans, businesses, as well as the trade union federations in our country, the workers' federations. So we can assure you that on Wednesday, as the Coronavirus Command Council led by the President, we will all sit. We will get a report on the regulations, on the new regulations that will come into effect on the 1st of May, on Friday. And again, we will also make sure that good work has been done there. We will do quality check so that as ministers go out on Thursday, the government itself and the leadership of government led by the President have indeed done quality check on the regulations.
All right. Just lastly, Minister, we're out of time. I just want to check if cabinet ministers are still respecting the lockdown regulations and they're not having lunch with their friends. And what I'm asking is, are we going to see you acting in another ministry again because some minister decided to violate the regulations?
We are all respecting the lockdown. By the way, all of us are subject to the laws of our country. No one is above the law. Just as we end, we will also be receiving this evening, tonight, about 180 doctors from Cuba who are coming to assist us in this war we are waging against COVID-19 coronavirus. So we are so excited that you have got these internationalists who are leaving their country to come and give a helping hand to South Africa in our fight against the coronavirus. But answering your question, no one is above the law, including ministers.
All right. Jackson Mthembu, the minister in the presidency, who is acting in the Department of Communications as well. Thank you so much for your time.